Avi Meyers, Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine, a presentation of Sonny Hirsch and myself, ntnm.org. On the web, you can see all our shows on YouTube. We're real big on community policing. CAPS24.org. The 24th District will continue to have monthly CAPS meetings, and we started having a judicial analysis conversation with Chicago's not only favorite, but only serious judicial blogger, and that would be Jack Leyhane. Jack, how you doing?
Abby, good to see you again.
My pleasure. And of course, the blog is called For What It's Worth, the old Buffalo Springfield song. And if you want to get tuned in to the most and latest good judicial information, go to From What It's Worth.
Thank you.
Thank you. I learned a lot from it.
Well, where were we?
Well, I think we were analyzing the election. To be honest with you, I've interviewed 5 other people today, so I don't remember a thing other than my name.
You know, I think what happened was last time we were talking about the judicial retention races, which by the time this thing airs, of course, we're going to be well into the 2014 campaign season.
Okay.
I mean, because it started, I think, November 7th. So
correct.
But for purposes of historical analysis and also for people who are thinking about the future, looking at what happened now.
By the way, you're not wrong. I've already seen people from law firms friending me on Facebook and LinkedIn who I'm willing to bet are going to wind up running for judge, and that's why they're doing that.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. It started. It started already. But in fact, I want to talk about that a little bit. But let me just finish up a little bit with when we're talking about the retention race. The one thing I mentioned the last time I know was, if you're thinking about 2014, this is not the time to start, using a Republican revival in your campaign strategy. One of the things that I kind of jumped out at me from the figures when I was looking at the city figures, for example, in the presidential race citywide. President Obama got 67.46% of the vote. Mary Jane Tice, running for the Supreme Court, got 74.46% of the vote. So she outperformed the top of the ticket. That tells you something about the strength of the Democratic Party down the ballot. Even in, let's say, the 41st Ward, which is not only my home ward, it happens to be the closest thing we have to a Republican ward. Mary O'Connor is now the alderman and committeewoman, and she's a Democrat, but the president only had a 53.32% vote in that ward. Again, outperformed by Mary Jane Tice in the in that race. So
interesting.
Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting phenomenon. The other thing that I wanted to mention was real quickly as we move through this was on the retention ballot. We talked about whether or not there is any effect of these negative ratings from the bar associations. Do they actually have any depressive effect on voter totals? And of course, we looked at some of the suburban totals last time. Obviously, it was the city that carried the day for a couple of the judges who were rated the lowest. And some of the wards that where they did the best were the African American wards in the south and west sides, because it just so happens that this year 2 of the lowest rated judges were African American women. One of the things that I wanted to look at, a control factor. Let's take a look at a highly rated African American woman. Let's take a look at a highly rated African American man. Both Judge Wright and Judge Diane Shelley, who I kind of picked on the last time, and I'm not picking on anybody, obviously. These are just looking at numbers. But they outperformed Judge Brim and Judge Hillville in the African American community as well. So I mean, no matter what you're looking at, I think it's reasonable from my conclusion to say that the glass is sort of half full. We do have some impact. That article that I sent you from the CBA Record, Dr. Klump, he says that, I think one of the conclusions he reaches is that if the organizations really want to figure out to go after a particular judge, they're going to have to kind of unite together and really focus in on things, and that a diffuse, let's look at all the facts and figures sort of thing. And he didn't mention my blog specifically, which I was grateful for, but But you know, which is what happens there. But at least that gives the grist for the mill. If somebody wants to take that and say, well, let's see if there's a consensus that forms around this person or that person. The important part is that if you're going to look at judicial retention races, we want to make sure that we never ever start throwing out good judges with bad judges. We want to make sure that we keep the quality and we have a very, very good bench, and we want to keep it that way. So we don't want to do anything about that. Now, looking ahead,
Yeah.
like I said, the 2014 season started November 7th. There have been a number of vacancies that have already been filled. Judge James Egan, who was on the retention ballot, his vacancy was filled before Election Day by Daniel J. Kubasiak. A couple of judges who ran against each other were reappointed after they lost. Judge Alfred M. Swanson Jr. and Judge Peter J. Vikelis. You interviewed both of them on your show.
Both of them very nice people. I'm very glad to hear that.
And very highly rated judges. Judge Swanson was appointed to the vacancy of Judge Arnold. Nancy Arnold retired from the bench, and Judge Vikelis was appointed to the countywide vacancy created when Judge Maureen Connors got elected to the appellate court. So they have appointments. Gregory Emmett Ahern, who ran for the 6th Sub-Circuit in 2012, was appointed to a countywide vacancy just at the beginning of December. That vacancy was created by the election of Judge Neville, P. Scott Neville, to the appellate court.
I had him on too.
Yes, you did. So there were also some judges who've been appointed by the Supreme Court who did not run in the primary, but they received new appointments. In other words, their old appointments were going to expire, like these judges who ran but didn't win. These also judges, their appointments were going to expire. They didn't run, but they got reappointed by the court. Judge Cynthia Cobb, former director of the Administrative Office of the Illinois Courts, appointed to a countywide vacancy created by the retirement of Judge McDonald. Judge Carolyn K. Moreland, who withdrew in favor of Judge Mike Mullen. I think you...
Mullen I just had on, yeah.
Yeah, I think you interviewed him. She was appointed to the vacancy created by the election of Judge Nathaniel R. House, Jr.
Who I also had on.
Yes. And then back...
and I should thank Michael Strom for some of these people, because he got me some of those victims.
Back in May, Judge Thomas J. Carroll, who withdrew from that 3rd Sub-Circuit race, was appointed to a countywide vacancy created by the death of Judge Donna Phelps Felton. So down the sub-circuits, moving along quickly, back in August, the Supreme Court appointed Judge James L. Kaplan to the 12th Sub-Circuit vacancy. That was the one created by the death of Judge Edward Jordan. And Judge Anthony C. Kyriopoulos was appointed to a 10th Sub-Circuit vacancy created by the retirement of Judge Daniel J. Sullivan. Judge Kyriopoulos had withdrew in favor of Judge Tom Allen, the former 38th Ward Alderman, in the 10th Sub-Circuit, so there wasn't a messy primary fight, and he did get a new appointment by the Supreme Court. Judge Bill Taylor was appointed to the appellate court vacancy created by the death of Justice Joseph Gordon, and Judge Frederina Lyle, who had been the 6th Ward Alderman at one time, had been serving in a 2nd Sub-Circuit vacancy, was appointed to the Taylor vacancy by the Supreme Court. So very recently, Judge Loretta Higgins Wolfson, who had been serving...
You had her on too.
Yeah, she was serving under a recall appointment. She was appointed to a vacancy of Judge Anthony Iasco in the 13th Sub-Circuit. That appointment's going to take effect right at the beginning of the year, and Judge Kenneth Fletcher, who'd been serving pursuant to a recall appointment, was appointed to the vacancy of Judge Susan J. McDunn. That vacancy had been assigned to the 10th Sub-Circuit, but Judge Fletcher's only going to be serving for a month, according to this latest appointment. His appointment ends December 31st, 2012. So a lot of the vacancies are filled. The Supreme Court is being consistent with the policy that it set out, that they are not going to make recall appointments. At least there's been no recall order. If you remember...
Got to be quick.
Retired judges were recalled to active judicial service. In the days when there was an age limit, it was really important to bring back some of the veteran judges who were very effective, brought them back. They used it for that purpose. That purpose no longer exists. They also used it to bring back some people that were appointed but couldn't, didn't have the good ballot names, couldn't get themselves elected. They've said they're not doing that, and so far they are not doing that, and that's what. But they are filling up a lot of those slots with some of the same people.
At this point, thank you very much, Jack Leyhane, for What It's Worth blog. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Bye-bye.